Come on, boys. Let's finish what you started.
The smell of bleach still hung in the kitchen air when Elena walked through our front door at 11:30 that Tuesday night. I was sitting at the granite counter we'd picked out together 3 years ago, nursing a beer and pretending to read contractor invoices. The truth was, I'd been watching the clock since 9, my gut churning with that familiar mixture of dread and certainty that had become my constant companion these past few months. "Hey babe," she said, dropping her designer purse on the marble island with that practiced casualness that fooled everyone but me. "Sorry I'm so late. The Henderson campaign presentation ran way over, and then Miles wanted the whole team to grab drinks to celebrate landing the account." Miles Hartman, her boss. The name that had been creeping into our conversations more and more lately, always accompanied by Elena's bright smile and slightly too enthusiastic tone. I looked up from my paperwork and took in my wife's appearance. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled despite her supposedly long day. Her makeup was fresh, not smudged or faded like it should have been after 14 hours at the office. And there, on her left forearm, was a bruise the size of a man's thumb. "Looks like quite a celebration," I said, nodding toward her arm. "What happened there?" Elena glanced down and her smile flickered for just a second. "Oh, that! I'm such a klutz. Tripped coming out of the restaurant and caught myself on a car door handle. You know how unsteady I get in these heels after a few drinks? Right. And I was the Easter Bunny. I'd been building custom homes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for 15 years, ever since I got out of the Army. I knew the difference between an accidental bruise and finger marks. More importantly, I knew my wife. Elena Warren was many things. Ambitious, calculating, image-obsessed, but clumsy wasn't one of them. The woman could navigate a construction site in stilettos without breaking stride. "Must have been some door handle," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Want me to take a look at it? Might need some ice." No, it's fine. Really?" She was already moving toward the stairs, her heels clicking against our hardwood floors. "I'm exhausted. Going to take a quick shower and head to bed." I waited until I heard the bathroom door close and the water start running before I pulled out my phone. Miles Hartman's number was easy to find. Elena had given it to me months ago when she first started working late, claiming I might need to reach her in an emergency. How thoughtful of her. He answered on the third ring, his voice thick with booze and arrogance. "Yeah? Miles, this is Jack Warren, Elena's husband." A pause. Then, "What the hell do you want?" "I want to know why my wife came home with bruises on her arm." The laugh that came through the phone was ugly and dismissive. "So, what if I roughed her up a little? What are you going to do about it, construction boy? Sue me? Elena's a big girl. She knows what she signed up for." The line went dead. I sat there for a long moment staring at my phone. In all my years of marriage, through all the fights and reconciliations, the good times and the growing distance between us, I'd never quite believed Elena would actually cheat on me. Suspect it? Sure. Wonder about those late nights and weekend conferences? Absolutely. But hearing Miles Hartman's smug confession, knowing that not only was my wife sleeping with her boss, but that he felt comfortable enough to put his hands on her. Something cold and methodical settled in my chest. The same feeling I'd had in Middle East when our convoy got ambushed, and I realized we were going to have to fight our way out. Not panic, not rage, just a crystal clear understanding that the situation had changed, and it was time to adapt. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Tommy Brennan's number. Tommy and I had served together, and now he ran a private security business that specialized in corporate investigations and, when necessary, more creative problem solving. "Jack? Jesus, it's midnight. What's wrong?" "Tommy, I need a favor, a big one. Name it." "Miles Hartman, CEO of Hartman Marketing Group. I need you to make his life very complicated, very quickly." Tommy was quiet for a moment. He knew better than to ask too many questions when I used that particular tone of voice. "How complicated we talking?" "I want him to wake up tomorrow morning and wonder if the world's gone insane." "Can you do that?" "Give me 12 hours. The next morning I was drinking coffee and reading the news on my tablet when Elena came downstairs. She'd covered the bruise with concealer and a long-sleeved blouse, but I could still see the faint discoloration if I looked closely. "Sleep well?" I asked. "Like a rock. You?" "Oh, you know me. I'm always up early." I gestured toward my tablet. "Interesting story in the business section this morning. Something about the FBI freezing assets at several Dallas marketing firms as part of a fraud investigation." Elena paused in the middle of pouring her coffee. "Really? Which firms? Let me see." I made a show of scrolling through the article. Hartman Marketing Group is mentioned prominently. Apparently, someone tipped off the feds about some irregularities in their client billing practices. The whole executive team is being investigated. The color drained from Elena's face. That's impossible. Miles would never what? She caught herself. I mean, the company's books are clean. I've seen the quarterly reports. I'm sure it'll all get sorted out, I said, standing up and grabbing my keys. These federal investigations usually take months, though. Probably going to be a rough time for everyone who works there. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Check the local news in about an hour. Your boy Miles had quite a morning. I kissed Elena on the cheek. She flinched slightly and headed out to my truck. Have a good day at work, honey. Try to stay out of trouble. The Lone Star Diner on Highway 35 had been my regular breakfast spot for the better part of a decade. It was the kind of place where the coffee was strong, the eggs were greasy, and the waitresses knew everyone's business before they did. More importantly, it was where Dallas's blue-collar network gathered every morning to share information, rumors, and the occasional truth. Penny Martinez had been working the morning shift at the Lone Star since before I started coming in. She was in her 50s, sharp as a tack, and had an encyclopedic knowledge of who was sleeping with whom in our corner of Texas. If you needed to know something about someone, Penny was your best bet. Jack Warren, she said, sliding a cup of coffee across the counter without being asked. You look like a man with something on his mind. Good morning to you too, Penny. And you're not wrong. Wife troubles? I shouldn't have been surprised that she'd cut straight to the heart of it. Penny had a gift for reading people. What makes you say that? Honey, I've been serving coffee to married men for 30 years. I know the look. She leaned against the counter, lowering her voice. Plus, I've seen your Elena around town lately. With company. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. What kind of company? The expensive kind. Big shot in a Mercedes, always picking up the check. They've been having lunch at Romano's every Thursday for the past month. Real cozy, if you know what I mean. Romano's was an upscale Italian place downtown, the kind of restaurant where business deals were made and affairs were conducted. Elena had mentioned eating there a few times recently, always in the context of client meetings. This big shot have a name? Penny glanced around the diner, making sure no one was listening. Miles something, Hartman, I think, owns that fancy marketing company in the high-rise district. Of course he did. Penny, I owe you one. Honey, you don't owe me anything. But if you need help evening the score, you know where to find me. I spent the rest of the morning at my current job site, a custom home in one of Plano's newer developments. The work was routine overseeing the installation of crown molding and built-in cabinets. But it gave me time to think and plan. By lunch, I had a strategy. Elena kept her gym bag in our bedroom closet. She'd been going to CrossFit classes 3 times a week for the past year, part of her commitment to maintaining her professional image. I'd always supported her fitness routine, even when it meant she was gone for 2 hours every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evening. Now I was wondering what else those gym sessions might be covering. I went home during my lunch break, ostensibly to grab some blueprints I'd forgotten. Elena was at work, dealing with what I imagined was a very chaotic day at Hartman Marketing Group. The house felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. All the little details that had once represented our shared life together. The wedding photos on the mantle, the vacation souvenirs scattered throughout the rooms, the carefully coordinated furniture we'd spent weekends shopping for, now felt like props in an elaborate performance. Elena's gym bag was exactly where I expected it to be, tucked behind her winter coats in our walk-in closet. I unzipped it carefully, not wanting to disturb the arrangement of her workout clothes and water bottle. At first glance, everything looked normal. Sports bras, leggings, protein bars, the usual collection of hair ties and lip balm. Then I found the phone. It was a basic smartphone, nothing fancy, tucked into a side pocket and wrapped in a small towel. Not Elena's regular phone. That was an iPhone 13 that never left her side. This was a burner, the kind of device someone used when they didn't want their communications traced or discovered. I powered it on and scrolled through the recent messages. Most were between Elena and a contact listed simply as M. The content was exactly what I'd expected and somehow still managed to make my stomach turn. Can't wait to see you Thursday. The usual place, E. Already made reservations. Wear the red dress, M. Last night was incredible. When can we do it again? Soon. Have to be careful with the husband situation. M. The husband situation. That's what I'd been reduced to. A logistical problem to be managed. I scrolled back further, looking for the beginning of their affair. The earliest messages were from 3 months ago, right around the time Elena had started working late and taking those mysterious weekend trips to industry conferences. What started as flirtatious work banter had quickly escalated into explicit planning of their encounters. But it was the most recent exchange that really caught my attention. He's getting suspicious, asked about the bruise. So? What's he going to do, divorce you? You'll get half of everything anyway. It's not about the money. I don't want him to make trouble for us. Let me worry about your husband. I've dealt with bigger problems than some contractor with an attitude. I took photos of the most incriminating messages, then carefully returned the phone to its hiding place. As I was rearranging Elena's gym clothes, I noticed something else tucked into the bottom of the bag. A small envelope, the kind used for greeting cards. Inside were $500 bills and a handwritten note, for being such a good girl. So Miles wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was paying her for the privilege. Whether it was prostitution, blackmail, or some twisted form of performance bonus didn't really matter. What mattered was that I now had evidence of their affair and proof that money was changing hands. I photographed the cash and the note, then put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Elena would never know I'd been there. My phone rang as I was leaving the house. Tommy's name appeared on the screen. "How's our friend Miles doing?" I asked. "Well, let's see. The FBI thing was just the beginning. As of an hour ago, his wife filed for divorce and took the kids to her mother's house in Austin. His country club membership has been suspended pending an investigation into some financial irregularities. And somehow, every client of Hartman Marketing Group received an anonymous email this morning detailing Miles's history of sexual maltreatment settlements." Settlements? Plural? "Oh, yeah. Turns out your boy has been a very naughty CEO for quite some time. 3 different women, all paid off quietly to avoid publicity. The information was buried pretty deep, but not deep enough." I felt a grim satisfaction settle in my chest. How deep are we talking? The kind of deep that requires friends in the right places and a complete disregard for conventional ethics. Let's just say Miles should have been nicer to his IT department over the years. What's next? That depends on how far you want to take this. Right now, Miles is dealing with a perfect storm of legal, financial, and personal problems, but if you want to really twist the knife, I'm listening. There's going to be a board meeting at Hartman Marketing Group tomorrow morning. Emergency session to discuss the company's response to all these allegations. Word is, they're looking for a scapegoat. And you think Miles fits the bill? I think Miles is about to discover that being the boss doesn't make you untouchable, especially when the board members start getting phone calls from reporters asking about their knowledge of the maltreatment settlements. After hanging up with Tommy, I drove to my current job site and tried to focus on work. But my mind kept drifting back to Elena, to Miles, and to the growing list of people who were about to learn that actions have consequences. Mrs. Pearson, our 73-year-old neighbor, was watering her roses when I got home that evening. She'd lived on our street for 40 years and had appointed herself the unofficial neighborhood watch coordinator. Nothing happened within a 3-block radius without Mrs. Pearson knowing about it. "Evening, Jack," she called out as I pulled into my driveway. "How's Elena doing? I haven't seen much of her lately." "She's been working a lot of late nights. Big project at the office." Mrs. Pearson nodded knowingly. "Oh yes, I'm sure she has. Though I have to say, her schedule seems quite unusual." I paused, my hand on the front door handle. Unusual how? Well, for someone who works such long hours, she certainly spends a lot of time at the Rosemont Motel on Thursday afternoons. I drive past there on my way to book club, seen her car in the parking lot several times. The Rosemont was a mid-range hotel about 15 minutes from our house, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask too many questions. Elena had never mentioned having any business there. "Are you sure it was Elena's car?" "Oh, absolutely! That little silver BMW is quite distinctive. Plus, I saw her coming out of room 237 just last week. She looked quite flustered." Mrs. Pearson's tone was carefully neutral, but her meaning was crystal clear. She knew exactly what Elena was doing at the Rosemont Motel, and she was giving me the information I needed to confirm it. "Mrs. Pearson, I appreciate you looking out for the neighborhood." "Of course, dear. We all have to watch out for each other, don't we?" Elena was already home when I walked through the front door, sitting at the kitchen counter with her laptop open and a glass of wine in her hand. She looked stressed, which was understandable given what had probably been a very difficult day at work. "How was your day?" I asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Honestly, terrible. There's some kind of federal investigation into the company, and Miles has been unreachable all day. The whole office is in chaos." "Unreachable how?" "His assistant says he's dealing with a family emergency, but nobody knows what's going on. The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning, and there are rumors that heads are going to roll." I poured myself a beer and sat down across from her. "Sounds like a tough situation. Anything I can do to help?" Elena looked up from her laptop, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been genuine vulnerability in her eyes. "Just be patient with me, okay? The next few weeks are going to be really stressful while we figure out what's happening with the company." "Of course. We're a team, right?" "Right." But as I watched her return to her laptop, typing what looked like text messages rather than work emails, I wondered if Elena had any idea just how much the team dynamic was about to change. The emergency board meeting at Hartman Marketing Group was scheduled for 9 in the morning, but I was parked across the street from their downtown high-rise by 8:30. Tommy had texted me the night before with a simple message: "Show starts at 9, don't miss the finale." Elena had left the house at 7, claiming she wanted to get to the office early to prepare for what she expected would be a difficult day. She'd seemed nervous, checking her phone constantly and changing her outfit twice before settling on a conservative black suit that screamed damage control. At exactly 9:15, the show began. Miles Hartman emerged from the building's main entrance looking like a man who'd been hit by a freight train. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and his face had the pale, sweaty complexion of someone who'd spent the night staring at the ceiling and contemplating the ruins of his life. Behind him, moving at a respectful distance, was a small crowd of reporters and photographers. Someone had clearly tipped off the media about the board meeting and its likely outcome. "Mr. Hartman," one of the reporters called out, "can you comment on your resignation from Hartman Marketing Group?" Miles stopped walking and turned toward the cameras with a snarl. "I have no comment on anything. This is all a misunderstanding that will be cleared up very soon. What about the maltreatment allegations? Are you planning to fight the charges?" "There are no charges," Miles snapped. "This is a witch hunt, orchestrated by my enemies and disgruntled employees." "Sir, we have copies of the settlement agreements." Miles pushed past the reporter, nearly knocking the man down in his haste to reach his Mercedes. But as he fumbled with his keys, I noticed something that made me smile. All 4 of his tires were flat. Tommy's work, no doubt. Miles stood there for a moment, staring at his disabled car with the kind of expression usually reserved for natural disasters. Then he pulled out his phone and started making what looked like increasingly frantic calls. 20 minutes later, Elena emerged from the building. She looked shaken but was trying to maintain her professional composure as she navigated through the lingering crowd of reporters. I watched her get into her BMW and pull out of the parking garage, then followed her at a discreet distance. Instead of heading home or to another work location, Elena drove straight to the Rosemont Motel. I parked at a gas station across the street and watched as she sat in her car for several minutes, talking on her phone. From her body language, the animated gestures, the way she kept running her hands through her hair, it was clearly an emotional conversation. Finally, she got out of her car and walked to room 237. The same room Mrs. Pearson had seen her leaving the week before. I gave her 10 minutes, then walked across the street and knocked on the door. "Miles?" Elena's voice came from inside. "Did you forget your keycard again?" "It's not Miles," I said. Silence. Then the sound of the security chain being engaged. "Jack, what are you doing here?" "I think we both know why I'm here," Elena opened the door. I can't. This isn't a good time." "It's never going to be a good time for this conversation, but we're going to have it anyway." Another long pause. Then the chain rattled and the door opened. Elena stood there in her bra and skirt, her blouse draped over a chair behind her. The room smelled like cheap air freshener and guilt. "How did you find me?" she asked. "Does it matter? The important thing is that I did." I stepped into the room, noting the rumpled bed, the bottle of wine on the nightstand, the scattered clothing that told the story of what had been happening here. "So this is where you've been spending your Thursday afternoons?" Elena's face cycled through several emotions. Surprise, fear, defiance, and finally a kind of resigned anger. Fine. You caught me. Are you happy now? Happy? Elena, I'm many things right now, but happy isn't one of them. She grabbed her blouse and pulled it on, her movements sharp and defensive. Look, Jack, I know how this looks, but it's not what you think. Really? Then explain it to me. Help me understand why my wife is half undressed in a motel room, waiting for her boss who just got fired for sexual maltreatment. Miles wasn't fired. He resigned. Is that really the detail you want to focus on right now? Elena sat down on the edge of the bed and buried her face in her hands. For a moment, I thought she might actually break down and tell me the truth. Instead, she looked up with the kind of calculating expression I'd seen her use during difficult business negotiations. Okay, yes, Miles and I have been seeing each other, but it's not some sordid affair, Jack. It's complicated. Complicated how? Miles has been mentoring me, helping me advance my career. The physical stuff, that just sort of happened, but it's not about love or anything like that. It's about opportunity. I stared at my wife, trying to process what she just said. You're telling me you've been prostituting yourself for career advancement? Don't be crude, it's not like that. Then what is it like, Elena? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been taking money from your boss in exchange for Zex. Her eyes widened slightly. How do you know about the money? I know about a lot of things. The burner phone, the cash in your gym bag, the bruises Miles has been leaving on you. I know about the Thursday lunch dates at Romano's and the weekend conferences that don't actually exist. Elena's face went white. You've been spying on me? I've been trying to figure out why my wife has been lying to me for months. And now I have my answer. She stood up and started pacing the small room, her mind clearly racing. Jack, listen to me. This thing with Miles, it's almost over. He's going to leave his wife and we're going to start a new company together. A real partnership. Elena, Miles just got fired from his own company. His wife already left him and took their kids. The FBI is investigating him for fraud, and there are at least 3 women who've accused him of sexual maltreatment. What exactly do you think he's going to be able to do for your career now? You don't understand. Miles is a survivor. He'll bounce back from this. No, Elena. Miles is finished. And if you keep hitching your wagon to his star, you're going to go down with him. She stopped pacing and turned to face me. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. But since you bring it up, let me be very clear about something. If you think you can humiliate me, steal from our marriage, and run off with your sugar daddy without consequences, you're badly mistaken. What are you going to do? Divorce me? Go ahead. I'll get half of everything anyway. The casual way she said it, like our 15-year marriage was just a business transaction to be dissolved, hit me harder than I'd expected. But it also clarified something important. Elena wasn't the woman I'd married anymore. Maybe she never had been. We'll see, I said, turning toward the door. Enjoy your afternoon, Elena. I have a feeling it's going to be one of the last good ones you have for a while. As I walked back to my truck, my phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Phase 2 is ready when you are. I looked back at the motel room, where Elena was probably calling Miles to tell him about our conversation. Then I typed back, let's do it. The next morning I was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper when Elena came downstairs. She looked like she hadn't slept much, which made sense given that she'd stayed out until after midnight. We need to talk, she said, pouring herself a cup of coffee with shaking hands. I'm listening. I want you to know that I've ended things with Miles. Whatever was happening between us, it's over. Just like that? Just like that. I realized yesterday that I was making a terrible mistake. I want to work on our marriage, Jack. I want us to go to counseling and figure out how to fix this. I studied my wife's face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or commitment. What I saw instead was the same calculating expression she'd worn at the motel, the look of someone trying to negotiate their way out of a bad situation. Elena, do you love me? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Of course I love you. We've been married for 15 years. That's not what I asked. Do you love me? Right now, today, do you love me? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. The pause told me everything I needed to know. I thought so, I said, standing up and grabbing my keys. Elena, I want you to think very carefully about what you do next, because the choices you make over the next few days are going to determine how the rest of this plays out. What do you mean? I mean that I'm not the same man you married 15 years ago. I learned some things in the army about how to handle people who betray their team. And I've learned some things in business about how to deal with people who try to cheat me. Elena's face went pale. Jack, you're scaring me. Good. Maybe that means you're finally starting to understand the situation you're in. I left her standing in the kitchen and drove to my job site, where I spent the morning installing custom cabinets and thinking about revenge. By lunchtime, I had a plan. Tommy met me at the Lone Star Diner, sliding into the booth across from me with a grin that suggested good news. Tell me you have something, I said. Oh, I have something all right. Miles Hartman just made the biggest mistake of his life. What did he do? He tried to pin the whole maltreatment scandal on Elena. I set down my coffee cup. What? Apparently Miles has been telling anyone who will listen that Elena seduced him, that she was the aggressor in their relationship, and that she's been blackmailing him for money and career advancement. The irony was almost perfect. Miles was trying to save himself by destroying Elena's reputation, not realizing that he was actually doing my work for me. How do you know this? Because Miles called a reporter from the Dallas Business Journal this morning and gave them an exclusive interview. The story's going to run tomorrow, complete with copies of some very explicit text messages between him and Elena. The text messages from her burner phone? The very same ones. Seems Miles kept screenshots as insurance just in case he ever needed to throw Elena under the bus. I leaned back in the booth, trying to process this development. Elena had betrayed me, but she was still my wife. Seeing her publicly humiliated in the business section of the newspaper would be satisfying in some ways, but it would also reflect poorly on me. Tommy, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need you to make sure that story doesn't run. Tommy raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? This could be the perfect way to destroy Elena's reputation without getting your hands dirty. I'm sure. Elena's humiliation is going to be public, but it's going to be on my terms, not Miles Hartman's. Okay. What do you want me to do instead? I pulled out my phone and showed Tommy the photos I'd taken of Elena's burner phone messages. I want you to make sure these get delivered to the right people, but not to the newspapers. Then who? Elena's clients, her co-workers, her book club, her yoga instructor, every single person in her professional and social circle. Tommy's grin widened. You want to destroy her from the inside out? I want her to understand that actions have consequences, and I want those consequences to come from the people she actually cares about impressing. What about Miles? Miles is going to have his own problems to deal with starting tonight. Elena didn't come home that night. I wasn't surprised. After Tommy's revelation about Miles trying to throw her under the bus, I had expected her to either confront him or go into hiding. What I hadn't expected was the phone call I received at 6 in the morning. Mr. Warren? This is Detective Sarah Renner with the Dallas Police Department. I'm calling about your wife. My blood went cold. What happened? Is she hurt? No, sir, she's not hurt, but she's been arrested. Arrested? For what? Attack and battery. Apparently, she attacked her former boss, Miles Hartman, in the parking lot of his apartment complex last night. Mr. Hartman is pressing charges. I sat up in bed trying to process this information. Elena had many faults, but violence wasn't typically one of them. Is she okay? Can I see her? She's being held pending a bail hearing this morning. You can see her after that, assuming she makes bail. What's the bail amount? That'll be up to the judge. But Mr. Warren, there's something else you should know. When we arrested your wife, she was carrying a significant amount of cash, nearly $10,000, and some documents that suggest she may have been involved in blackmail. The pieces started falling into place. Elena had gone to confront Miles, probably to demand that he retract his statements to the reporter or to get more money to disappear. The confrontation had turned physical, and now she was facing criminal charges. Detective Renner, I'll be there as soon as I can. Actually, Mr. Warren, before you come down here, you might want to know that your wife has been asking to speak with you. She says she has information about Miles Hartman that you need to hear. What kind of information? I can't get into specifics over the phone, but she seems to think that Mr. Hartman poses a threat to you personally. After hanging up with Detective Renner, I called Tommy. Jesus, Jack, I heard about Elena on the police scanner. What the hell happened? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Can you meet me at the county jail? On my way. The Dallas County Jail was exactly as depressing as I'd expected. Gray concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, and the smell of industrial disinfectant mixed with human desperation. Elena looked small and fragile in her orange jumpsuit, her perfect hair disheveled and her makeup smeared. Jack, thank God you're here, she said as soon as the guard brought her into the visiting room. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Miles is planning to hurt you. Elena, slow down. Tell me what happened last night. I went to his apartment to confront him about what he'd been telling people. About how he was trying to make me look like the villain in all this. Her hands were shaking as she spoke. But when I got there, he wasn't alone. Who was with him? 2 men, big guys, looked like the kind of people you hire when you want to intimidate someone. Miles said they were there to help him solve his Jack problem. A chill ran down my spine. His Jack problem? He blames you for everything that's happened to him. The FBI investigation, his wife leaving, losing his job, he thinks you're behind all of it. Elena wasn't wrong. I was behind most of it. But I hadn't expected Miles to figure that out, let alone take direct action against me. What exactly did he say? He said that you'd been asking too many questions and getting too close to the truth. He said that men like you, military men, were dangerous when they felt betrayed, and that the only way to handle the situation was to eliminate the threat. Eliminate the threat? Elena's eyes filled with tears. Jack, I think he's planning to have you eliminated. The visiting room suddenly felt very small and very cold. Elena, why should I believe anything you tell me? You've been lying to me for months. Because despite everything I've done, despite how badly I've screwed up our marriage, I don't want to see you hurt. And because Miles showed me photos. What kind of photos? Photos of you, at work, at home, at the diner where you eat breakfast. Someone's been following you, Jack. Someone's been watching your routine and documenting your movements. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process this information. If Elena was telling the truth, then my campaign against Miles had escalated into something much more dangerous than I'd anticipated. Why didn't Miles just call the police if he suspected I was behind his problems? Because he can't prove it, and because he's got too much to hide himself. But mostly because he's not thinking rationally anymore. Jack, you destroyed his entire life in less than a week. His career, his marriage, his reputation. It's all gone. He's desperate and angry, and he's not thinking clearly. So he decided to hire muscle to solve his problems. That's when I attacked him. When I realized what he was planning to do to you. Elena reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I know I don't deserve your help after what I've done. But please, Jack, you have to be careful. Miles is dangerous. I studied my wife's face, looking for any sign that this was another manipulation, another lie designed to serve her own interests. What I saw instead was genuine fear, not for herself, but for me. Elena, I need you to tell me everything. Every detail about what you saw and heard at Miles's apartment. For the next 20 minutes, Elena gave me a complete account of her confrontation with Miles. The 2 men were professionals, probably ex-military or ex-police. They'd been hired to conduct surveillance on me and, if necessary, to make me disappear in a way that would look like an accident. Miles had shown Elena photos of my daily routine, my work sites, even the inside of my truck. Someone had been following me for at least a week, documenting my movements and looking for the best opportunity to strike. The plan was to make it look like a construction accident, Elena said. Something with heavy machinery or a building collapse. Miles said it had to look natural because too many people would ask questions if you just disappeared. When is this supposed to happen? Soon. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Miles said he wanted to move quickly before you could cause him any more problems. I left the jail with my mind racing. Elena's bail hearing wasn't until the afternoon, which meant she'd be safe in custody for at least a few more hours. But I needed to figure out how to handle Miles and his hired muscle before they decided to make their move. Tommy was waiting for me in the parking lot, leaning against his truck with a grim expression. "How bad is it?" he asked. "Bad. Miles has hired professionals to eliminate me." Son of a witch. I didn't think he had the balls for something like that. Apparently, we underestimated how desperate he'd become. I filled Tommy in on Elena's story, watching his expression grow darker with each detail. "Jack, you need to disappear for a while. Let me handle this." "No. Running away isn't going to solve the problem. Miles will just wait until I surface again." "Then what do you want to do?" I looked back at the county jail, where my wife was sitting in a cell because she'd tried to protect me from the consequences of my own actions. Then I thought about Miles Hartman, sitting in his apartment with his hired butchers, planning my end. I want to end this, tonight. What did you have in mind? Miles wants to play hardball? Fine, Let's show him what hardball actually looks like. That evening, I drove to the construction site where I was building a custom home for a wealthy client. It was a sprawling, modern design with clean lines and expensive materials. The kind of house that would sell for $2 million when it was finished. More importantly, it was isolated, surrounded by empty lots and half-built foundations. If Miles and his men were planning to make their move, this would be the perfect location. I parked my truck in the usual spot and made a show of unloading my tools, just like I did every day. But instead of going into the house, I circled around to the back and took up a position where I could watch the access road. Tommy was positioned on the opposite side of the site, armed with a high-powered camera and a direct line to Detective Renner. The plan was simple. Let Miles's men make their move, document everything, then turn the evidence over to the police. At 8:30, a black SUV pulled up to the construction site. Two men got out, both wearing dark clothing and moving with the kind of professional efficiency that confirmed Elena's story. These weren't street thugs or amateur criminals. They were experienced operators who knew how to handle themselves. I watched through binoculars as they surveyed the site, looking for the best approach to the house. One of them was carrying what looked like a crowbar, while the other had a coil of rope. Their plan was probably to make it look like I'd been eliminated during a break-in or robbery gone wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Got them on camera. Police are en route. But as I watched the two men approach the house, I realized that waiting for the police might not be enough. These were professionals who would know how to cover their tracks and avoid leaving evidence. Even if they were arrested tonight, Miles would just hire different men to finish the job. I needed to send a message that would end this permanently. I slipped out of my hiding spot and circled around behind the SUV. The keys were still in the ignition, a mistake that was about to cost Miles's hired muscle dearly. I drove their vehicle about a quarter-mile down the road, then called Tommy. "Change of plans," I said. "I'm going to have a conversation with our visitors." "Jack, that's not smart. Let the police handle this. The police will arrest them, they'll make bail, and Miles will hire new people. This needs to end tonight." I walked back to the construction site, where the two men were now inside the house, probably setting up whatever scenario they'd planned to use to eliminate me. I picked up a piece of rebar from a pile of construction materials and tested its weight in my hand. Then I walked through the front door. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice echoing in the empty space, "I think we need to talk." The two men spun around, clearly surprised to see me. The larger one, a man with a shaved head and prison tattoos, reached for something under his jacket. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," I said, holding up the rebar. "See, I know why you're here. I know who sent you. And I know what you're planning to do to me." The smaller man, who looked like an ex-cop, stepped forward. "Look, buddy, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. Miles Hartman hired you to eliminate me and make it look like an accident. The question is, are you really willing to commit homicide for whatever he's paying you?" The two men exchanged glances. They were clearly professionals, but they were also smart enough to recognize that the situation had changed. "What do you want?" the ex-cop asked. "I want you to go back to Miles and give him a message. Tell him that if he ever comes near me or my family again, I'll make what happened to his career look like a minor inconvenience." "And if we don't?" I smiled, the same smile I'd used in Middle East when explaining to captured insurgents why cooperation was in their best interest. "Then you're going to find out why the Army taught me 17 different ways to eliminate someone with construction materials." The larger man took a step back. "Look, man, this isn't personal, it's just business." "Then let me make you a better business proposition. You walk away right now, forget you ever met Miles Hartman, and I'll forget I ever saw you. But if you come back, if you make another attempt on my life, I'll hunt you both down and show you what real violence looks like." The ex-cop studied my face for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if I was bluffing. Whatever he saw there must have convinced him that I wasn't. "Come on," he said to his partner. "This job isn't worth it." "What about our ride?" the larger man asked. "You'll find your SUV about a quarter-mile down the road. The keys are on the front seat." As the two men walked toward the door, I called out one more time. "Don't forget to give Miles my message." 20 minutes later, Detective Renner arrived with 2 patrol cars and a very disappointed expression. "Mr. Warren, we were told there was an attempted homicide in progress." "Must have been a false alarm, Detective. Just me working late on the house." She looked around the empty construction site, clearly not buying my story, but unable to prove otherwise. Mr. Warren, if someone is threatening you, the proper response is to call the police, not to take matters into your own hands. I'll keep that in mind, Detective. As the police cars drove away, Tommy emerged from his hiding spot with a grin. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest. Probably both, but it worked. What makes you so sure? My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Message received. No further action will be taken. Because professionals recognize other professionals, I said, and they know when a job isn't worth the risk. Miles Hartman's world continued to collapse over the next few days, but he wasn't going down quietly. Elena made bail and came home, but the atmosphere between us was strained and artificial. She'd moved into the guest bedroom and was making a show of trying to rebuild our marriage, but I could see the calculation behind every gesture. She was positioning herself for the divorce proceedings, trying to establish a narrative where she was the repentant wife, working to save her relationship. What she didn't know was that I'd already spoken to a divorce attorney. The infidelity gives you grounds for fault-based divorce in Texas, the lawyer had explained. Combined with the evidence of financial misconduct, the cash payments from her lover, you should be able to protect most of your assets. What about spousal support? Given the circumstances, it's unlikely she'd be awarded significant alimony, especially if we can prove that she was essentially prostituting herself for career advancement. The legal strategy was sound, but it wasn't enough. Elena had humiliated me, stolen from our marriage, and put my life in danger with her reckless affair. A simple divorce, even a favorable one, felt like letting her off easy. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to lose everything. Tommy had been busy implementing the second phase of our plan. The explicit text messages between Elena and Miles were making their way through Elena's professional and social circles, but not through mass distribution or anonymous emails. Instead, Tommy was using a more targeted approach. The key is to make it look like gossip, not like a coordinated attack, he explained over breakfast at the Lone Star Diner. So I'm having different people discover the messages and share them with their friends. How does that work? Well, for example, Elena's yoga instructor found a printout of the messages in her car yesterday. She showed them to a few people in the class, and now half the women in Elena's social circle are talking about it. Where did the printout come from? Officially, no one knows. Unofficially, I may have slipped it under her windshield wiper while she was teaching a class. The beauty of Tommy's approach was its subtlety. Elena couldn't point to any single source of the leaks or claim that she was being systematically targeted. Instead, it looked like her secrets were just naturally bubbling to the surface through normal social channels. What about her work situation? That's where things get interesting. Hartman Marketing Group is in full damage control mode. They're trying to distance themselves from both Miles and Elena, but they can't fire her without cause because she hasn't been convicted of anything yet. So she still has her job? For now. But her biggest clients have started asking questions about her judgment and professionalism. Word is, the Henderson account, the one she supposedly landed, is thinking about taking their business elsewhere. I felt a grim satisfaction at this news. Elena's career had always been the most important thing in her life. More important than our marriage. More important than basic honesty and decency. Watching it crumble because of her own choices felt like poetic justice. But Miles was still out there, and I knew he wasn't done causing problems. That afternoon, I was installing trim work at my current job site when I noticed a familiar black SUV parked across the street. It was the same vehicle Miles's hired muscle had been driving, but this time there was only one occupant, a man with a telephoto lens camera. I called Tommy immediately. "They're back," I said. "The same guys from the other night?" "Different guy, same vehicle. He's taking pictures of me." "That doesn't make sense. I thought we'd resolved that situation." So did I, but apparently Miles didn't get the message. I finished my work for the day and drove home, keeping an eye on my rearview mirror. The SUV followed me for about half the distance, then turned off onto a side street. But I had the distinct feeling that I was still being watched. Elena was in the kitchen when I got home, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner. She'd been making these domestic gestures for the past few days, trying to play the role of the devoted wife working to save her marriage. "How was your day?" she asked, not looking up from the stove. "Interesting. Someone's been taking pictures of me at work." Elena's hand froze on the wooden spoon she was using to stir whatever was in the pot. "Pictures? What kind of pictures?" "The surveillance kind. Professional equipment, professional technique. Any idea who might be interested in documenting my daily activities? She turned to face me, and I could see the fear in her eyes. Jack, you don't think Miles would what? Hire people to follow me around? We already established that he would. The question is why he's still doing it after I made it clear that further action wouldn't be tolerated. Maybe he didn't call them off. Maybe they're working independently now. That was a disturbing possibility I hadn't considered. If Miles's hired muscle had decided to continue their surveillance on their own, it could mean they were planning something more elaborate than a simple homicide for hire. Elena, I need you to tell me everything you know about those men. Names, backgrounds, how Miles found them, everything. I don't know their names. Miles just called them his associates. But I got the impression they weren't just hired for this job, they seemed to know him personally. What do you mean? The way they talked to him, the way they interacted. It wasn't like a business relationship. It was more like they'd worked together before. A new possibility began to form in my mind. What if Miles's problems weren't just the result of my campaign against him? What if there were other skeletons in his closet? Other people he'd wronged who might be looking for payback? Elena, during your affair with Miles, did he ever mention being in trouble with anyone else? Other business partners, investors, maybe people he owed money to? She thought for a moment. There was something about a development deal that went bad. Some investors who lost a lot of money and blamed Miles for misrepresenting the risks. What kind of development deal? I don't know the details, but Miles seemed really worried about it. He said the investors weren't the kind of people who accepted losses gracefully. The pieces were starting to come together. Miles hadn't just hired muscle to deal with me. He'd hired protection because he was already in trouble with dangerous people. The surveillance might not be about planning an attack on me. It might be about using me as a distraction or a scapegoat. I called Tommy and asked him to meet me at the construction site that evening. If Miles was planning to use me in some scheme to solve his other problems, I wanted to be ready. What do you think he's up to? Tommy asked as we surveyed the half-built house. I think Miles is more desperate than we realized, and desperate people do stupid things. Such as trying to stage a confrontation between me and his other enemies, hoping they'll take each other out and leave him in the clear. Tommy considered this. That's pretty elaborate, and pretty risky. Miles has always been a gambler. It's how he built his business, and it's probably how he's going to try to save himself. We didn't have to wait long to find out. At 9 o'clock, the black SUV pulled up to the construction site, followed by a second vehicle, a white van with tinted windows. That's new, Tommy observed. 4 men got out of the 2 vehicles and began moving toward the house. I recognized 2 of them as Miles's original hired muscle, but the other 2 were unfamiliar. They moved differently, with less professional discipline and more obvious aggression. Tommy, call Detective Renner. Tell her we've got a situation developing. What are you going to do? I'm going to find out what Miles is really up to. Instead of hiding and waiting for the police, I walked out of the house and confronted the 4 men directly. Gentlemen, this is becoming a habit. What can I do for you this time? The ex-cop I'd spoken to before stepped forward, but his demeanor was different now, more nervous, less confident. Warren, we need to talk. I'm listening. This isn't about you anymore. Miles has gotten himself into some serious trouble with some serious people. They think you're part of it. What kind of trouble? One of the new men, a heavy-set guy with gang tattoos, spoke up. Miles Hartman owes our employer $2 million, money that was supposed to be invested in a real estate development that never got built. And you think I'm involved in this development deal? We think you're the reason Miles can't pay back the money. All his problems started when you began messing with his life. I almost laughed at the irony. Miles's financial troubles had nothing to do with me, but his enemies had decided I was responsible because of the timing of his other disasters. Let me guess, I said. Miles suggested that if I were out of the picture, he'd be able to get back on his feet and repay the debt. The gang member nodded. Something like that. And you believed him? We're willing to try anything at this point. Our employer doesn't like being stiffed. The ex-cop looked uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Look, Warren, this doesn't have to get ugly. Just walk away from whatever vendetta you've got against Miles, let him rebuild his business, and everybody wins. Except that I'm not the reason Miles can't repay his debts. His business is gone, his reputation is destroyed, and he's facing multiple criminal investigations. Even if I disappeared tomorrow, he'd still be broke and unemployable. Maybe. but our employer wants to be sure. The gang member reached into his jacket and I tensed, ready to fight or run. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a photograph. You know this woman? It was a picture of Elena taken recently outside our house. That's my wife. Miles says she's got information about where he hid some of the money he owes us. Says she was helping him move assets around to avoid his other creditors. My blood went cold. Miles wasn't just trying to use me as a scapegoat. He was planning to sacrifice Elena as well. My wife doesn't know anything about Miles's business dealings. Miles says different. Says she was his partner in more ways than one. The sound of sirens in the distance interrupted our conversation. Detective Renner and her backup were finally arriving. This isn't over, the gang member said, backing toward the vehicles. We'll find another way to get our money back. As the four men drove away, I realized that my war with Miles had escalated into something much more dangerous than I'd anticipated. He wasn't just trying to destroy me, he was trying to drag Elena down with him, using her as leverage with his creditors. For the first time since discovering Elena's affair, I felt something approaching protective instincts toward my wife. Detective Renner arrived with 3 patrol cars and a very serious expression. Mr. Warren, this is the second time this week we've responded to reports of threats against you. What exactly is going on? I gave her a carefully edited version of events, focusing on Miles's financial troubles and his attempts to use me as a scapegoat with his creditors. Do you have any evidence of these alleged debts? Not directly, but I'd be willing to bet that if you looked into Miles's business dealings over the past year, you'd find some interesting connections. Detective Renner studied my face for a long moment. Mr. Warren, I'm going to give you some advice. Whatever's going on between you and Miles Hartman, it needs to end before someone gets seriously hurt. I couldn't agree more, Detective. But as I drove home that night, I knew that the situation was far from over. Miles was desperate, cornered, and dangerous. He'd already tried to have me eliminated, and now he was involving Elena in his schemes to avoid his creditors. It was time to end this permanently. The plan came to me at 3 a.m, jolting me awake with its elegant simplicity. Miles Hartman had made a critical error in judgment. By involving his creditors in his vendetta against me, he'd revealed the true scope of his financial problems. More importantly, he'd shown me exactly how to destroy him completely. I got up and went to my home office, where I spent the next 2 hours researching property records, business filings, and court documents. By dawn, I had a clear picture of Miles's desperate financial situation. Hartman Marketing Group had been hemorrhaging money for months before I'd ever gotten involved. Miles had been using new client deposits to pay old debts, borrowing against company assets to fund his lifestyle, and apparently taking money from private investors for development deals that existed only on paper. My campaign against him hadn't caused his financial collapse. It had simply accelerated the timeline and made it impossible for him to continue hiding his problems. But the most interesting discovery was the identity of his primary creditor, Dmitry Volkov, a Russian businessman with suspected ties to organized crime. Volkov had invested $2 million in a luxury hotel development that Miles claimed to be building in downtown Dallas. The project had never broken ground, the permits had never been filed, and the money had disappeared into Miles's personal accounts. Men like Dmitry Volkov didn't write off $2 million losses as the cost of doing business. Elena was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, dressed for work and looking nervous. Jack, we need to talk about what happened last night. I'm listening. Those men who came to see you, they mentioned me. They said Miles told them I was involved in his business dealings. Are you? Elena's face went pale. Not the way they think. I mean, yes, Miles asked me to help him with some financial transactions, but I thought it was legitimate business. What kind of transactions? Moving money between accounts, setting up shell companies, that sort of thing. He said it was for tax purposes. I stared at my wife, trying to process what she'd just admitted. Elena, do you realize what you're describing? What do you mean? You're describing money laundering and possibly fraud. Elena sank into a chair, her face now completely white. Oh God, Jack, I didn't know. I thought I was just helping with routine business operations. How much money are we talking about? I don't know exactly, but a lot. Millions of dollars. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Miles hadn't just been paying Elena for Zex. He'd been using her to help hide stolen money from his creditors. Elena wasn't just an adulteress, she was an unwitting accomplice to fraud. Elena, I need you to tell me everything. Every transaction, every account, every shell company. All of it. For the next hour, Elena gave me a detailed account of her involvement in Miles's financial schemes. She'd opened bank accounts in her name, signed incorporation papers for fake companies, and transferred millions of dollars through a complex network of shell corporations. All of it was documented, all of it was traceable, and all of it pointed to a conspiracy between Miles and Elena to defraud his investors. Jack, what am I going to do? If the police find out about this, you're going to prison, I said bluntly, unless we find a way to fix this. Can you help me? Please, Jack, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm scared. I looked at my wife, really looked at her for the first time in months. The confident, calculating woman who'd been manipulating me and betraying our marriage was gone. In her place was someone who was genuinely terrified and completely out of her depth. Elena, there's only one way to fix this. You're going to have to testify against Miles. What do you mean? I mean, you're going to have to tell the authorities everything you just told me. You're going to have to admit that Miles used you to launder money and that you were too naive to understand what was happening. But that would destroy my career, my reputation. Elena, your career is already over. Your reputation is already destroyed. The only question now is whether you're going to prison or not. She started crying then, real tears for the first time since this whole mess had started. Jack, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know, but sorry isn't going to fix this. Only action will. I called Detective Renner and arranged a meeting for that afternoon. Then I called Tommy and asked him to meet me at the diner. You look like a man with a plan, Tommy said, sliding into the booth across from me. I am, but it's not the plan I thought I'd be making. I filled Tommy in on Elena's revelations about her involvement in Miles's money laundering operation. Jesus, Jack, Elena's in serious trouble. I know, but her trouble is also our opportunity. How so? Because Elena has detailed knowledge of Miles's financial crimes. Knowledge that Dmitry Volkov and the FBI would both find very interesting. Tommy's eyes widened. You're going to use Elena to bring down Miles. I'm going to give Elena the chance to save herself by telling the truth. What she does with that chance is up to her. And if she refuses, then she goes to prison and Miles eventually gets eliminated by his creditors. Either way, my problem gets solved. That afternoon, Elena and I met with Detective Renner and an FBI agent named Marcus Chen. Elena, with my encouragement, told them everything about her involvement in Miles's financial schemes. Mrs. Warren, Agent Chen said when she'd finished, you realize that what you're describing constitutes multiple federal crimes? Yes, Elena whispered. And you're willing to testify against Mr. Hartman in exchange for immunity? Elena looked at me, and I nodded. Yes, I'll testify. Then we have a deal. But Mrs. Warren, you need to understand that this is going to be dangerous. Mr. Hartman has already demonstrated a willingness to use violence, and his creditors are even more dangerous. We'll protect her, Detective Renner said, but she's going to have to cooperate fully. That evening, Elena and I sat in our living room, surrounded by federal agents who were preparing her for her testimony. The house felt like a safe house, with armed guards and surveillance equipment. Jack, Elena said during a quiet moment, I know this doesn't make up for what I did to our marriage, but thank you for helping me. Elena, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. I know, but still, thank you. The next morning, the FBI raided Miles Hartman's apartment and found evidence of the money laundering operation, along with detailed records of his communications with Dmitry Volkov. Miles was arrested and charged with fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. But the most satisfying moment came 3 days later when I read in the newspaper that Dmitry Volkov had been arrested by federal agents as part of a larger investigation into Russian organized crime activities in Texas. Miles's attempt to use dangerous criminals to solve his problems had backfired spectacularly. Instead of eliminating me, he'd led the FBI directly to his creditors. The final act played out in court 6 months later. Elena testified against Miles in exchange for immunity, detailing his financial crimes and his attempts to use violence against me. Miles was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Dmitry Volkov was also convicted, but his sentence was much longer. Elena and I divorced quietly, with a settlement that protected my assets and left her with enough money to start over somewhere else. She moved to Seattle, where she took a job with a small marketing firm and tried to rebuild her life. I kept the house, the business, and most importantly, my self-respect. 6 months after the trial, I was having breakfast at the Lone Star Diner when Penny brought me a newspaper. "Thought you might want to see this," she said, pointing to a small article on page 3. The headline read, "Former marketing executive dies in federal prison." Miles Hartman had been found dead in his cell, apparently the sufferer of a prison fight. The article noted that he'd been serving time for fraud and money laundering. "Looks like some debts never get paid," Penny observed. "Looks like it," I agreed. I finished my breakfast, left a generous tip, and drove to my current job site. There was a house to be built, and I had work to do. Some people might call what happened to Miles Hartman justice. Others might call it revenge. I preferred to think of it as the natural consequence of choices made by people who thought they could cheat, steal, and hurt others without facing any repercussions. Elena had learned that actions have consequences, but she'd learned it in time to save herself. Miles had learned the same lesson, but too late to matter. As for me, I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't something you inflict on your enemies. It's simply giving them enough rope to hang themselves. The hammer had dropped, and justice had been served.